What's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Now let's get into it. Jon Jones plans to be in peak physical condition this summer, hopes for a UFC offer. Jon Jones' long-awaited debut at heavyweight is still simmering in the eyes of many fight fans around the world. Jones finally being able to ply his trade with the big boys is something that everyone has been looking forward to for quite some time now, ever since he vacated his light heavyweight title in mid-2020. Many people thought that the UFC would immediately allow him to fight for the heavyweight title against either Stipe Miocic or Francis Ngannou. But after Ngannou won the title following his knockout of Stipe in March of last year, the UFC has refused to pay either man the money that they publicly stated they'd been seeking for this massive fight. What we got instead was Ciryl Gane as interim champion after he beat Derrick Lewis, and then Ngannou successfully defending his title against the Frenchman and his former sparring partner this past January, solidifying his stance as the heavyweight champion. Jones, meanwhile, still sits on the sidelines, biding his time, and is waiting for the offer that might come this year. With Ngannou expected to be out of competition for the remainder of the year due to a knee surgery, there's a chance that the UFC will be pitting two heavyweights for an interim title fight until he returns, and speculation is rampant that one of those challengers could be Bones. But so far, there's no indication that this is the case. In a response to a fan who asked whether the UFC offered him a fight yet, Jones recently stated this: "Nope, but my plan is to be in peak condition come June or July." UFC President Dana White always plays it close to the vest, and it remains to be seen if Jon Jones would actually be making his heavyweight debut later this year. If you ask his coach, Henry Cejudo, he believes that Jones will be fighting this year, but it's unclear as to when. Do you think the UFC will have Jones fight this year? And who do you think will be his first heavyweight opponent? Durinho blasts Colby Covington for not calling out other welterweight contenders. Gilbert Burns might have a path back to the welterweight title if he's able to get past the much-hyped Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 273 next Saturday in Jacksonville. In the run-up to the fight, he's doing all kinds of interviews and fielding all sorts of questions. In the aftermath of a massive fight between fellow welterweight contenders Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington, two men whom Burns knows very well, he believes that Colby is only able to secure fights with people whom he knows he has a great shot against. Burns believes that Colby is overrated and then some. Case in point, this is what Durinho said while on the Portuguese language podcast Trocação Franca. Covington dropped the ball by asking for Poirier instead of a welterweight contender. He doesn't accept fights. That's the hard part. I've been trying to get a fight with Colby for years and can't. Colby is very smart. If you look at his fights, he doesn't fight anyone who's coming off a win. Oh, if it wasn't for Usman, he'd be champion. Really? Fighting against nobodies, no contenders? He's someone I'd like to fight. Do I think this fight is really gonna happen? I don't know. He doesn't accept it and negotiates well. Goes out there and talks a bunch of crazy stuff, and a lot of people like his crazy talk. What can I do? Burns goes on to say that Colby is a boring fighter who doesn't really finish people and ducks other more worthy contenders in favor of matchups that he knows he could win outside of the championship title fights. Do you agree with Burns that Colby should be calling out other contenders? Or do you believe Colby is playing this as best he could? Kelvin Gastelum says he is compromised in first statement after UFC 273 withdrawal. It's been a topsy-turvy week for Kelvin Gastelum. The former middleweight title challenger had a big fight coming up against Dricus du Plessis at UFC 273 on April 9th, a fight that he was saying was the beginning of a resurrection for his career. But now he's having to go back home on account of an undisclosed injury. In a video posted on Twitter, Gastelum addressed his fans and supporters, and he stated this.
And I unfortunately have to withdraw from the fight. I was advised not to disclose the injury, and just know I am compromised, and I can't and won't be heading into the fight compromised the way that I am.
Gastelum goes on to thank everyone for the support, and he also apologizes to his team for being unable to perform due to the unforeseen injury. The former welterweight had been looking to finally turn it around in his career after going 1-5 in his last 6 outings, but all against top-tier talent. What do you think of Gastelum being unable to fight at UFC 273? And do you think the 30-year-old will be able to mount another title run when he does return to the cage? Don't forget to take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of the latest fight news. UFC owner Ari Emanuel is out earning all of the Hollywood executives $308 million. That's how much Endeavor CEO and UFC owner Ari Emanuel made last year alone, according to recently disclosed SEC filings from the 2021 fiscal year. Emanuel made over $308 million in 2021, the bulk of which is paid out in stock, with recognized earnings at about $67.5 million. Still, the $308 million in earnings is such a massive number. By comparison, the top 10 entertainment and media CEOs made a combined $350 million in 2021. Ari Emanuel and his Endeavor vehicle purchased 100% of the UFC back in March of 2021, with fighter pay in the UFC being one of the hot button issues that it is, especially with fighters like Francis Ngannou speaking out and the likes of Jake Paul making a massive stink over the whole thing. This only gives more fuel to critics of the UFC over what is being perceived by some as a massive labor issue. Just recently, in an earnings call involving Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel and others, Emanuel defended UFC fighter pay, as well as the pay structure overall. The UFC is headquartered in the United States, where sports is big business. While athletes in the NBA, the National Football League, and Major League Baseball have about 50% revenue share with the owners, the UFC is said to have 16% revenue share with their athletes, a much lower threshold that some deem to be exploitative. What do you think about how much Ari Emanuel made in 2021 with regard to fighter pay? Multiple sources are saying that Andre Fili is going to fight Jonderson Brito at a UFC Fight Night event on April 30th. Andre Fili hasn't fought since June of last year after he had a no contest in his fight against Daniel Pineda over accidental eye pokes. Before that, he lost a unanimous decision to Bryce Mitchell back in October of 2020. Meanwhile, Brito lost his UFC debut back in January of this year against Bill Aggio, losing a unanimous decision to him. Again, this featherweight matchup is looking to take place on April 30th. What do you think about this fight between Fili and Brito? Who do you got your money on? Let us know in the comments. Signed and booked. UFC re-signs Katlyn Chookagian for Amanda Ribas fight. Katlyn Chookagian's last contracted fight for the UFC was a unanimous decision win over Jennifer Maia back at UFC Vegas 46 in January. At the time, it was unclear if the promotion would actually re-sign Chookagian, although some did believe she would test free agency and see how much value she could bring to another separate organization. Well, just a few months later, multiple sources have stated that the UFC is re-signing Chookagian and immediately is matching her up against Amanda Ribas, who is moving up from strawweight to fight in the 125-pound flyweight division. Chookagian is a former title challenger for the flyweight belt, but she lost to Valentina Shevchenko by a TKO in the third round back in February 2020. Since then, she's won 4 out of 5 fights, and she's currently riding a 3-fight winning streak. Chookagian is currently number 2 in the flyweight rankings. Meanwhile, Ribas has won all but one of her fights in her UFC career and is coming off a unanimous decision victory over Virna Jandiroba at UFC 267 this past October. Ribas, who is currently number 9 in the strawweight rankings, was set to fight Michelle Waterson in March until that fight fell through due to an injury to Waterson. Chookagian will be taking on Ribas at a UFC Fight Night event on May 14th. What do you think about this matchup between Chookagian and Ribas? What are your thoughts on Ribas moving up to flyweight? And who would you put your money on in this fight? Today's video was jam-packed with some juicy stories from the fight world. What are your thoughts about what's going on in MMA? Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more videos just like this. See you next time.